Yeah, it's the ketogenic obviously is a new thing. A lot of books on it. When you go in the diet section of Barnes and Noble, there's an entire section on just ketogenic diets. Is there a like, I know there's research on it, but in terms of like your patients or more like practical studies, have they looked at ketogenic diets to see how it affects a normal person? Not someone perhaps with like a specific disease, but just, let's say there's a kid, he's an athlete, for example, and he's been on a very high carb diet, a lot of brown rice, sweet potatoes, but it's all healthy, staying away from bread and pasta and stuff like that, but there's a lot of carbs. And then now, would it help in any way to go on a ketogenic? Because I know there's this interplay of glucose being used for energy versus ketones being used for energy and things like that. So what are your recommendations for someone who's like an athlete or someone who's more like doing a lot of activity? Is it still okay for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few patients, former Olympians actually, is kind of cool. And they come in, like this one guy came in and I was like, why are you here to see me? See me. He's also 9 feet tall and just solid muscle. And I said, what do you need my help for? And so he sat down with me and showed me he was on 200 units of insulin a day. So carb loading for training, and I took a look at his blood work, and his ALT was like through the roof. And we ordered a abdominal ultrasound, and his liver was just like a big chunky monkey in there, just full of sugar. And so young people who are training like that are just sort of going to get to that point. And he said, I stuck to the sweet potatoes and the whole, the brown rice, the whole grain rice, and the whole wheat bread, and I was eating more of these whole grains, but he's like, it still caught up with me. And he's like, I thought I would be safe by sticking to it, but it was just too much. So now he's doing pretty well. He's off of his insulin, lost a little bit more weight than I think he wanted to. But he's doing pretty well, and he's feeling better. And he says he feels better now when he's training. Now he trains other athletes, but he still performs himself. And he said, I feel better now, than I did before, like when I was sort of at my peak. And he's like, I'm 10 years older than I was when I was at my peak. So he's like, if I was only doing this back then. So through our experience, I would definitely sort of push towards a ketogenic diet for everybody, but having a lower carbohydrate diet at any age, I don't think is unnecessary. I think when we have kids in a few years, things will be available to them, more sweet potatoes, those sorts of things, but small portions, not significant portions. I have an Italian father and a British, an Irish mother, so potatoes were half of the plate of food. So, for our kids, more complex carbs, and, but keeping it to like less than 20% rather than 50% of that meal while they're growing up in their formative years. But I think everybody, athlete or not, would benefit from scaling back the carbohydrates, even the really complex and refined carbohydrates.